Hi, thanks for joining us on this segment on human trafficking. My name is Allie Martinez, and I'm the chair of the Mid-Michigan Human Trafficking Task Force, which is a branch of the state Human Trafficking Task Force. I'm joined this afternoon by Victor Yarkovsky, who is here to talk to us about Truckers Against Trafficking, a local human trafficking initiative, actually probably a national human trafficking initiative,
yes, it is.
Right? And so, Victor, can you tell us about yourself? Can you tell us about Truckers Against Trafficking and how you got involved with it?
Well, certainly. It started off, well, looking at me, I put on my first full-time badge in 1979.
Okay.
In 1986, I came to the state police as a motor carrier officer, commercial vehicle enforcement specialist. And so it's been, next month will be 35 years I've been with the state police. Then about 20 years ago, I got the bright idea to go back to college, earned a master's in counseling, and started working part-time as a mental health therapist.
Yeah.
Well, about 2014, during a conference, my division became aware of the Truckers Against Trafficking program. And this was an initiative that started early on. It's actually a 501c3 organization, but it was looking at human trafficking and how we can mobilize the transportation industry to get involved in this and the fight against human trafficking. Well, our captain at the time, he looked at it, said, this is a great program, we need to get on board with this right away. But I think the first thing he said was, why haven't I heard of this before?
Yeah, yeah.
And so we started up with that, and we really fired up in January of 2015 and started working with, partnering with the Truckers Against Trafficking initiative.
Yeah, and that's excellent. I think about all the time that has elapsed since then, but the way that that initiative has kind of formed and changed. And so as a motor carrier officer, as a mental health therapist, as a representative with Truckers Against Trafficking, how do you then define human trafficking?
Human trafficking is, well, you have the legal definition. That is utilizing somebody for some type of commercial sex or debt bondage through the use of force, fraud, or coercion.
Yeah, our buzzwords, right?
However, there's more to it than that. When you look at what is happening, you are using and taking a human being and in essence, selling them or using them over and over and over again for some sort of gain or profit. And when you look at it also, I see the damage that it does to them physically and psychologically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The impact of the trauma can be very big. And in a sense, for me, it's maybe a little bit close. I'm first generation born in this country. My family survived the occupation of Poland. They were enslaved to work for the Nazi war machine. Wow. So for me, this is, one generation away.
Yeah. Yeah, a very personal fight that you can kind of make that connection with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that when people think about human trafficking and law enforcement involvement in human trafficking, probably very few of them think about the Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division. And so how does that division play a part in the fight against human trafficking?
We have quite a bit of contact with the trucking and transportation industry. And so many times our people might be investigators, auditors that go in and they're checking the books and the documents that they have to have on hand, but also they're talking with them and making them aware of this.
Yeah.
There is also a whole industry that is surrounding the transportation industry. So there is an industry such as the truck stops. The different organizations and positions, jobs that are involved in somehow supporting this. And they're involved as well. For example, a lot of the major truck stop chains, happily, I can say that they are already making the pre-employment training, or I should say new employee training, having human trafficking being a part of that.
Wow.
And including that in their ongoing training. There are also, some time back, we started looking at this and realizing that it's not just people transporting goods. It's also people transporting people. Mm-hmm. That's another part of the transportation industry. So whether it be school buses, charter buses, long transport buses, or even local buses. Just recently here in Midland, the Midland Dial-A-Ride was doing their annual training for their drivers. They asked me to come in and present to them on human trafficking.
Yeah, I think that that's a division of the workforce that so many of us don't think about. I know when there was a big push to train like hotel employees, everybody thought, oh, well, that makes sense because they're using hotel rooms to facilitate this operation. But we don't think about the truck stops and the places where there's all of this regular movement of people and goods, like you said, and having those sort of eyes and ears on the ground there.
It's basically a target-rich environment. When you're looking at, for example, commercial sex, where you are trying to get as much as you can, you're not going to go to some place where, they might get one customer.
Yeah.
But if you have a truck stop in the evening that's just filled up with trucks, they're probably looking at that as the potential for a target-rich environment.
So when you're training staff at these various avenues, what are the indicators that you're teaching them to look for?
Well, looking for quite naturally, for a truck stop, somebody going around knocking on doors from truck to truck. Is that normal? What are the things that are out of the norm? And probably also trying to change the mindset, whereas at one time it may have been considered, oh, the lot lizard is just a normal part of the trucking industry. No, it isn't normal. And matter of fact, this is something where you are looking at probably human trafficking, because there is going to be probably some form of force, fraud, or coercion that these victims are going to be facing.
Yeah.
And so they are out there knocking on the doors. Now, in some instances also, though, we have to look at, is there labor trafficking? So are people being moved around for that purpose? It could be something, not necessarily looking at a large tractor trailer, but how about a van that's hauling people around to different jobs at night?
Yeah.
So this could be a labor trafficking situation. I was aware of a situation where foreign nationals were being brought into the country, and every night, and naturally they came in with the promise of, you're going to go to school, you'll have all these wonderful opportunities brought before you, but didn't happen. They were being loaded up every night and taken out to work sites, to various jobs, cleaning jobs.
Yeah, so. I think that we don't talk about enough that the hospitality industry and this domestic servitude industry is one of the highest industries where we see exploitation of people. And so considering, why are all of these grown men in a van together in the middle of the night at a truck stop, looking into those different indicators.
Now, one of the other things is when we do any sort of a training, we have wallet cards that we hand out. This one is from the Truckers Against Trafficking. This one is for the bottle, which stands for Busing on the Lookout. But inside, it has various information such as, what are some things that you would look for? How about what would be a red flag if you have somebody who seems to be controlled, particularly in what they are saying? you ask somebody a question, they're looking to somebody else.
Yeah.
What's the right answer? Are they afraid to give an answer? So we hand these out, wallet cards that they can keep handy, and quite naturally, the national hotline on the back.
Yeah.
And the front, numbers that they can call.
And is that what you encourage folks to do when they see something that seems suspicious to them, is to call that national hotline?
Absolutely. Well, the first call would be to 911.
Yes.
That's probably a faster route.
Mm-hmm.
In some instances, people will call 911. They are a little hesitant to call 911. They're afraid, well, what if I'm wrong? What if I'm bothering somebody?
Mm-hmm.
And, well, call 911. But if, you just are not comfortable with calling 911, okay, call the national hotline. Run it past them.
Yeah.
Okay? Maybe a little bit of affirmation is all that they need to say, yeah, you've got something that doesn't look right. Call 911.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that so many people don't realize the tracking systems that exist within 911, that maybe, I'm calling about a weird van full of migrant workers on 2 a.m. on a Tuesday, and they had already received a call the past Tuesday or the past Thursday about this same van. And so maybe it doesn't seem like an emergency in that moment, but as they're kind of looking back through those records, they start to see that recurrence of this suspicious event and are more likely to check it out.
Yes. Or in some instances, it's also the other officers out there. Call goes out to somebody and somebody else will jump on, that sounds like one that we had over in a different area.
Yeah.
So if you have a county dispatch where you have multiple agencies on the radio listening and hearing those calls go out, and it's very common that we hear that.
Yeah. What a supportive network to really think about within our little regional communities is this opportunity for multiple people to be thinking on these types of events. But we don't know about them unless someone calls, right?
Yes, exactly. I worked another agency at one time, and somebody came in and was, pounding on the desk and complaining to me and saying, and do you know that this, and do you know that that, and do you know that this? And I said, did you ever report this to us?
Yeah.
Well, if you don't report it to us, we're not going to know. Well, it was almost like a threat. I'm going to do it now, every time. Okay, good, please. That's very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the strangest thing sometimes. I had a call once, or I heard from a law enforcement friend about a young lady that was seen at a local truck stop in the BV area. She was just sitting outside at a picnic table at this Flying J, counting a whole wad of cash. And someone had called and said, this just really doesn't seem right to me. She doesn't have a lot of clothing on. She has this huge wad of cash. She's a young lady. She's all alone. And if you're not thinking, or watching your surroundings, these are the types of things that you don't notice. And I wonder at times if it was someone who had received the Truckers Against Trafficking training that called that behavior out.
Yeah. And it is, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember there was a case a couple of years ago where a teenage runaway had hooked up with a couple. They were living in motels. They were trafficking her in different places, like at truck stops, and they were using the money to support their heroin habit. And they were, they were caught and they were prosecuted.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. You never know what's going to happen. A lot of times you never know what's going to happen this side of heaven.
Right.
On if you make a call, or even, handing out a card, putting a sticker, perhaps, on, naturally with permission, but, on a restroom window or something. Often people think about, what can we do?
Yeah.
They would like to think about, oh, geez, I would like to do something. I'd like to get involved and help. But I'm not a cop, and I'm not somebody that's going to go and kick down doors, and I am not somebody who is, going to put their head on straight once they're recovered. But maybe it's just the little things. Probably one of the most useful things that I can remember doing was for the Mid-Michigan Task Force during one of the meetings, getting ready for the annual January event. I spent one of the meetings stamping coffee sleeves with the phone numbers.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe somebody read that off of a coffee sleeve, made a call. Who knows? But sometimes it's the little things. There was we're looking at the 20th anniversary of 9/11.
Yeah.
Okay. In the days after 9/11, there were a lot of mental health professionals that were sent out, or they went to different areas where there was rescue and recovery efforts going on. A well-known traumatologist went to Ground Zero, spent time there. When he came back, he said, probably the most useful thing I did while I was there was hand out sandwiches and clean underwear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because maybe that's the first thing that's needed. Many times the first thing that's needed is somebody making that call to get the process started.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I guess as a motor carrier officer and working with, truckers and the different transportation industry that many of us don't think about, what would be your suggestion to people who are just out and traveling?
Keep your eyes open. Look around. It's often been said, if it doesn't look right, it probably isn't.
Yeah.
And unless you are somebody who's out there deliberately trying to make things rough for somebody, you are making calls just that have no basis just to give somebody a hard time. If it checks out and it's all right, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to come running around looking for you and say, you made a false police report.
Right.
No. If you see something, you accurately say this is what you saw.
Yeah.
Now, the best thing is collect what information you can, open your eyes and look at everything that you can so that you can call it in. The more information, the better. But it's not a good idea to try and take matters into your own hands and go running out and think that you're somebody in a Taken movie and grab somebody and throw them into the car and take off with them.
Yeah.
That's not a good idea.
Yeah, you literally took the words right out of my mind in the sense of vigilante efforts right in that moment of there are safe things that you can do to keep an eye on someone, but certainly not encouraging you to chase them down the highway or try to get them into your vehicle or anything like that.
Because we also know, and we've also seen, that many times a person can be recovered, but they're not necessarily rescued. That it's going, many times, that the victim might go back to that world because that's all they know or that's all they feel safe with. The work that you do with Underground Railroad is very important because what is one of the number one needs of anybody being brought out of that life? Housing, shelter, safety. You have different organizations. Here in Midland, you have Shelter House. You have Underground Railroad. You have many different organizations as well. People that want to get involved, that's also something that they can do. Volunteer with a shelter. Volunteer with a human trafficking task force. We have the Mid-Michigan Task Force that I'm happily acquainted with you through. But then there's also a Midland County Task Force that is available right here, right in this community. So there are many things that the individual can do. Keeping their eyes open, looking, collecting as much information as possible, and making a call. And that is really one of the biggest things.
Absolutely. And I want to, before we close, I do want to just bring it back around to something that you mentioned prior in the interview of this idea of lot lizards and kind of the culture that people have come to expect at truck stops and from truck stops. You know, I grew up, my mom wouldn't let me go to a rest area at night. If I was traveling, that was the one rule: don't go to a rest stop at night by yourself, right? So there is, I feel like, some perceptions that the public has about truck stops in these various areas, and like you said, kind of this norm of the lot lizards and people going around and knocking on the doors and, oh, it's just you know. Do you see a cultural shift happening through these presentations? Are you starting to see sort of this upset in that expectation or that reputation that these places and these people have?
I think so. I think so. I believe also, though, it's a difference in the means that are being used. Rather than standing on the street corner, you know, hey, sailor, want a good time?
Yeah.
Or, you know, knocking on the doors at the truck stops. Now it's become much more cyber. And that there's probably a lot of it going on just utilizing computers and other things rather than putting it out there so that it's so blatantly obvious.
Yeah.
Now, I will say this, you know, things have been a little bit difficult with COVID, but even with COVID, for example, in 2020, we managed to have our January program.
Yeah.
However, shortly after that, things started shutting down. But even with that, let's see, from our stats from the year 2020, we conducted quite a bit of training. We were able to, let's see, I should have highlighted this.
Right. Looking at notes is hard.
I'm looking at notes with my bifocals. Good thing I've got new bifocals here. However, we had 49 programs that we ran. And this was throughout the state of Michigan. We have pretty much each state police district, we have 2 of our officers who are in each district who are specifically trained as coordinators.
Okay.
And then we figured that the presentations, we reached about 6,700 individuals.
That's incredible.
And getting the information out to the people, running programs, and it wasn't just all trucking industry. Sometimes it's different organizations, such as working with the Human Trafficking Task Force. We've done, as a matter of fact, Truckers Against Trafficking gave the Michigan State Police their 2020 award.
Oh, excellent.
For a law enforcement agency.
Yeah.
For the work that we did. So we've been working at that even with COVID going on. When things, hopefully, as things start coming down, things start opening up again, we can start doing a lot more of the face-to-face work, which has always been the difficult one. We still have done some trainings, some things. I know I've done some on Zoom.
Right.
So I'm kind of like the talking head right there. But
yeah.
And, you know, you were just remarking when I first saw you today that, you know, it's been like a year and a half since we've actually seen each other face to face, that we weren't just simply talking heads on a computer screen.
Yes, but it also has given us the opportunity to continue in this vital work.
Exactly.
And to be able to take it online.
Yeah, there was a person who used the term semper gumby, always flexible.
That's what you have to be in this work.
Exactly. And go where you're needed, do what you can, do the best you can, and if it's not working one way, try and find another way.
Yes. And I think that that's great advice even for the community that's watching in terms of how they can make an impact within their local communities. And so if somebody wants to receive training, if someone's watching from the transportation industry today and they want to get connected with someone like you to train them, how would they go about doing that?
Well, they can contact the Tri-City Post, ask for me. They'll get a message to me.
Okay.
I'm off on the road usually most of the time, working out of the car. That's often made it kind of interesting when we're having our task force meetings, and occasionally I have to take off while I'm driving, and I'll be right back.
Yeah.
But contact the Post or contact division headquarters down in Lansing. But it's a lot easier to contact your local post.
Right.
Also, there's a lot of information available as well at the Truckers Against Trafficking website.
Yes.
Now, if you go there, you will find that there are things like how to become a certified trucker against trafficking. Well, it involves, watching some videos and some training there. You don't have to be a truck driver. They might ask you, who do you drive for?
Right.
My kids.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh?
Yeah, but that's what they do quite often. They will give you the information. You can become a certified trucker against trafficking. You can sign up for their newsletter. You don't have to be in the transportation industry per se, but this is a good source for information that's constantly coming out.
Yeah, I know I've spent time on their website and they have some really useful materials there and some really great accurate materials there. And even I was impressed today looking at the posters that you can download and have printed for free and place in your area that are more than just pertaining to the trafficking industry. They do some really great work.
Yes, yes they do.
And so. Thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for viewing the show today. And if you'd like additional information about Truckers Against Trafficking, you can visit truckersagainsttrafficking.org. And you can also find the Mid-Michigan Human Trafficking Task Force on Facebook for more information. Thanks so much for viewing this afternoon.